Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, co-host here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
Well, it's election night 2024. We have no idea how this is going to pan out.
Yep.
We'll see. So by the time this comes out next week or 2 weeks or whatever, maybe a different America. I don't know.
Probably
But
not.
I'm having the best scotch in the world. If you've not had the 12-year...
Some say it's the best.
Some say... We just start with level up. I just need to hear this Trump story. Anyway, yes, I'm having some really good, some Macallan 12-year in a double oak cask, I think it's called.
Yep.
Really good stuff. It's kind of where I cut my teeth in scotch, and there's a reason why, because it's good stuff. And preparing for the playoffs.
Yep.
Y'all, you got the victory the other night, right?
We did. Did I get it? Yeah, okay, there we go. Check my teeth there. We haven't eaten anything, so I don't know. Yeah, we one of the things I can say about our program is the last few years, and this year especially, I mean, we've talked about it more off air. We were not good at the beginning of the year. We play a weird schedule where really the first three are, honestly, three of the most winnable games. They're teams that we've scheduled that are out of our old districts, so they're not the 4As and the 5As, and they're schools that we schedule because they're good matchups for us year in and year out. And we lost a close one, and then we won the next two, one close and one not, and then we go through a juggernaut. Like we go through the gauntlet, and then we have that generally goes poorly. Although we've had some good, we have some good and some bad, but it went worse this year than normal. But we came out of it, and we lost our next game, of the could win, should wins, couldn't win. These are the could wins kind of games. We lost the first one, close game, should have won it. They probably feel the same way, but have won the last two. And honestly, each game we've played a better game, a more complete game. So, one game, it's like our defense is finally starting to show up, but our offense sputters. And then, we have one where the offense shows up and the defense, does enough, but the offense is starting to come around. But really, we had the wild game. And then I think it wasn't wholly complete. The defense got really tired. There were some drives where we couldn't move the ball on offense, but overall, we look like a football team. And honestly, at the beginning of the year, and we can look at it and go, God, we replaced whatever 9-10 starters on defense. We replaced, I don't know how many starters on offense. I think 8 or something like that, 7 or 8 on offense. We went into this game without our starting quarterback, but of course, our starting quarterback for the last 2 years is the backup. He's been playing receiver all season. He's been playing some quarterback, but all 2 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks really.
Right.
So he went in and played, lights out, one of the best games he's ever played. When we needed him, he stepped up. And so that locked us into the first. I think we can officially say now. At first it was like we are, and then it was like, oh no, we're not. And then it was like, oh no, we are, because we have all these calculations we talked about last week. So I think we're locked in. As far as I know, we are locked into, this is kind of funny, we are locked into the 4 seed, which is a home playoff game. We have 8 teams that go in our conference. And it kind of goes to what we're going to talk about tonight, really. We still have our 10th game coming up this Friday. They're 9-0, but they play a very different schedule. So I wouldn't say that it's not a should win for sure. It's a could win, but it's like a could win. It's like we could win this, but we got to go out and play a really good game.
For sure.
If we do that, it probably means nothing. We're probably still the 4 seed. But if we lose, we're still the 4 seed. We're locked in. So like we literally, so for the last few years, we've been going into the playoff. Now for years, and again, I've coached my head coach for years. For years before this new playoff system, you had to literally be 9-1, 10-0 to even get 9-1 teams. Regularly, there was one 9-1 team that didn't go to the playoffs.
Right.
And so then they changed the playoff system when they redistricted everything, redid the level. We used to have 1A, 2A, 3A for years and years and years. Now we have 6 classes. It's much better. There's At that point in time, we were a 3A. The school I'm at right now was 750 students, and 3A was the highest. So we would have had to beat, teams with 3,000 kids in the school for a state championship. Like so that's a better system now, but we had to do all this stuff for it, and it's easier to get in the playoffs now. So, but we went for years playing that 10th game of the season, meaning nothing because it was the end of the year, right? Because it was just over. And then I think the last time that I had a game that didn't quote unquote matter for seeding was 2018 when I was a head coach, and it mattered because we were both 9-0, right? We were going to be the 1 and the 2 seed. It was already decided because they were 8-1, we were 9-0, but they had lost to a private school that didn't count basically, and they had not lost a district game in a decade. So like this was important.
Big.
We did not win it, but that was the last time where seeding wasn't affected by a game. The last 2 years we went to the playoffs, and that last game we could have lost it and been out. They were basically playoff games. We were, the 10th game was a playoff game for us. So it is a weird position to be in. We got some healing up we need to do, but at the same time, it doesn't matter win-loss, but it certainly matters how we go into the playoffs. We can say we've got some guys out, we've got some this and that, but if you go in getting smoked, it doesn't have a good feeling.
So that I was going to ask is, at what point do you say, okay, head coach, like, listen, the game doesn't matter. If somebody needs some confidence, sure, we'll let them sit and get some, I'm gonna let them play. But is there any way that you just sit your starters and go,
no?
If playoffs
First of all, we can't.
Does not change.
We can't. We only have 23 varsity players.
Oh.
We can't sit anybody, right? And then we have a couple of them that are out. We have enough that are out that like we can't sit anybody else. And we can't put kids out there and just get torched. It's not happening. Because if we sit the couple of guys that you say, like, we make sure these guys are good to go, we'd get destroyed at this level.
Right.
You're very dependent on a few guys. And then everybody else, like, we would be putting in a guy who is not ready to be a varsity starter right now, essentially. So it's just not even an option. And it's not in our nature either. It's not in my nature. It's not in a head coach's nature. It's not in our nature we're going to go out and we're going to play as hard as we can and try to win the game. And we're going to play all of the guys that are healthy, and we're going to do everything that we can. Like, it's just not. And I think that's a bad decision now, unless you're just so good that, like, your next guys could win this game for you, whatever, and you can just coast. But we're not that, right? We're not that. This would be a huge win for our program.
Right.
Even though it's not a playoff game, it would be a huge win for our program. Every win is big for this program. Going in with momentum to the first round of the playoffs would be enormous. Now, the funny thing is we're locked in at 4. The 1 is locked in. The 2 and the 3 are probably not locked in, but they're 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then there's about 6 teams that could be 5 or could be out. It's wild from that point on.
That is pretty crazy. We lost last Friday, which for us locked us into the 3rd seed. But for us, we have each class. So class B through 6A. B is where 9-man ball starts, but or 8, whatever they play. I don't know. Anyway, the rest of us all have 4 divisions, and then those 4 divisions each send 4 teams to the playoffs, except maybe the big level. I don't know what they're weird. It's like everybody gets in or something.
It's a lot of states.
That's not true. You guys in Oklahoma are going like, no, coach, you're an idiot. I realize they don't all get in, but a bunch of them do. Anyway, so it's all 16-team playoff brackets. So losing this last Friday, we played the team that they locked in being 2nd. It bumped us to 3rd. And so now they will host, and we will have to travel somewhere. But when you start looking silver lining and opportunity and all that resiliency stuff, it does get us away from the number 1 team in the state at our level, who is a thriving private school, which...
Yeah, y'all have the private school deal. Yeah,
a whole different conversation here. But so it puts us on the opposite side of the bracket of them. So if we would have won and we win our first round, we would have had to play them in the second round. Now, theoretically, we could get... there's still a private school waiting in the second round here, but... or a team that we beat earlier in the year. So it's kind of one of those weird situations. Anyway, we're excited. It sucks to take that loss. But once again, you got to be resilient, and you preach that stuff to your kids all the time. So if you come out just throwing a fit because now you're traveling, like, it is what it is, man. Just look for the silver lining and go on.
Yeah, the whole thing is to get in.
That's right.
And then like
Get in,
play for
get
seeding,
hot.
but you've got to get in and give yourself a chance. Obviously, if you go, like in our case, if you go in the 8 seed, you get the 1 seed. It's not good, but it's not like it's never happened. It's not where you want to be, but it's not like it's never happened. So
Just think of Bill's brother, Bill Blankenship's brother, Rex. I think his was get in, get hot, and get a win or something. I can't remember. He had a little quote he said for playoffs. But anywho,
cool.
Yes.
Here we go.
Playoff football's here. So what we're going to talk about tonight is playoffs and more to the aspect of having to start game planning for a team you've probably never seen or not seen very often. Maybe you've seen them because you're a successful program, right? And you're going back to the playoffs again, and y'all are both kind of around the same level you always are. Or, some people have like playoff rivalries. Like we always end up playing that team in the semis or whatever. But in this first round, the odds are that if you're really good, you've picked up a team who's always that bubble team. So some years in there, some years they're out. Or if you snuck in, probably not seen this team yet. So hopefully nobody makes you play the same team back to back or anything like that. Like we can't play anyone in our district again until I think the semifinals. It's just
one year we played 2017. Week 9, we played Nottoway. Week 10, we played Goochland. First round of the playoffs, we played Nottoway. Second round of the playoffs, we played Goochland. It's just like Groundhog's Day. Let's do the end of the season over again.
That's terrible.
And I can't remember if Nottoway was home and home or if they were both at Nottoway. I know one of them was at Nottoway, but Goochland was both at Goochland, I think.
Oh,
yeah. So
they got the nice field and stuff, though, right?
It's kind of the nicest 1 and 2A.
Got you.
It's the one that's not the outfield of the baseball field. How's that? We
go.
weren't standing in the infield dirt as the away team. Every other team we're standing. Actually, Nottoway. You know what? As a matter of fact, Nottoway and Goochland were the two that you're not standing in the infield dirt. Well, so at least there was that. But when they come to play us, stand in the infield dirt.
Y'all are in a baseball field?
Well, not now, not the team. But now,
your other
school. The team I was at then.
Yeah, I got you. Touche. Sweet, man. Well, let's pay some bills real quick, and then we'll get into it.
You can check out the complete guide to ultimate guide to creating your defensive system. If you go over to joedanielfootball.com/system, you can get access to that. It's an instant download. It's a guide we put together. It's going to tell you things like what is a system, what do you need to have in your system, how to install your system, and mistakes that you must avoid when installing your defensive system. So as you're looking to prepare your defensive system, shore it up for the off season, in the off season, whether you're changing, whether you're thinking about changing, or whether you just want to clean up your playbook now, it's a really good quick read for you to check out. Go to joedanielfootball.com/system.
Awesome. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. I realize the season's coming to an end. I will have some kind of content there to help you get through the cold months in which we don't play football, which is so sad. I know I don't want year-round football, but man, when it's only like 3 months, it sure is sad. Anyway, patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Come check it out. Cool. Let's do this. Question 1. So we're talking about playoffs, talking about playing that team you never play or haven't seen in years. So what are the initial challenges that we're going to face as coaches as we start to prepare, especially right now? Like it's technically week 9 in Oklahoma. Well, I guess it is week 10 now. We don't know who we're going to face. So you're on a short leash or a short time span, right? You have no idea who's coming. So what are the challenges there?
Yeah, I don't think we're doing the same thing that everyone is doing. Is like we've kind of looked at, okay, this is the scenarios. Now for us, there's a lot of scenarios. There's more likely scenarios. There's less likely scenarios. Like I think someone said that there's a team that we beat early in the year. I would love to play again because, like I said, we're playing our best football, and I would love to see what that looks like. I think they're playing better football too, quite honestly. That there's a scenario where it's them. There's a scenario where it's the team that we beat Friday. But there's also the scenarios where it's teams that we've never seen before, that we know nothing about. So there's just the element of the unknown here. and not having, I don't, you guys are a little bit cleaner. Like, we kind of have to wait. We can all sit there and try to do the calculations, but there's so much to it. We have rider points, which are based on, we have to calculate every single team and who they beat and who they, do we get 1 point or 2 points? Do we get no point? All this stuff, who'd they lose to? So it goes pretty deep. And so really, until, I think they usually have it either Sunday or Monday. Usually I think it's Tuesday morning or something like that it comes out during the season. But I think after week 10, I think it comes out a little bit earlier. That's when you get your official, okay, this is who you're playing. So then, I think it's Monday. So Monday night, everybody's scrambling around trying to exchange film, and we know in the world today, half the time it's easier to just go to one of the teams that already who played them and be like, can you send me that? Like, we're all going to get it. Like, anybody that's listening to this podcast, if you don't exchange film, you're being very foolish. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. Okay. You're not withholding film. All you're doing is making it harder because you're not getting our film. And like, maybe you already got our film and that's what you feel like you're going to do, but that's just being a dick. So don't do that. Don't do that. Just exchange film. I know we have quick cuts and it's annoying because you don't know how to get a download link. For the love of God, just get a download link. Set it up.
Is that what y'all's team uses? Is quick cut? You don't use Huddle at all?
No, we don't use Huddle. Huddle's just ridiculous. Huddle's absolutely ridiculous. Do you see they brought back support? I don't want to get sidelined here, but they brought back telephone support.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay. You know what? Idiots. I'm glad you did it. It's about time. Those are ridiculous. You absolutely. I'm glad you came to your senses.
There we
go. Whatever. End of comments.
Yes. You talked about, like, I think film. We'll talk about that later. Like, what you can do to get film, to get more film, whatever. There's that. This is where teams who just do what they do may have a little bit of an advantage, right? There's teams out there that are like, nope, we don't care what you do. We're going to run what we run. On
as far as the team that, getting the film. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. The idea of we're going to get your film. We're going to see if there's anything weird that we need to go over in practice, but ultimately it really doesn't matter. We're going to line up and we're going to do this.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how much film do you like to go over when you're like Saturday when it's
2 weeks, the past 2 weeks, and then if there's a team that looks like us that they played, that's so we'll
4 has been
back
my
a little
limit.
bit further if we can find that.
I want enough data points that we get a going in, coming out, a lot between the 50s, some red zone, or between the 50s, between the 20s, that red zone. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, like, you can't break down 10 film anyway. Some people try.
Yeah, I'm very much a do what we do. So I'll watch those couple of games and again find people. If I can find somebody who uses a tight end wing, of course we line up in so much stuff that we've got the ability to line up in so many things that I can watch film and just see. I'm looking for ways to break your umbrella, to break your get rid of a force player, open up a gap, whatever. And if I see that, especially if I see that multiple times, then we're probably going to line up in that and run a couple plays that attack it or that take advantage of it. I want enough to see, like, the things that I need to see is like, do your defensive linemen squeeze down blocks? Do your linebackers follow pullers? Does your free safety get down in the alley? Can I get the edge on your force defenders? Do you have force defenders? How far off do your corners play? Do they press? Do they play off? Do they mix it up? Do they play no man's land? What's their technique? Are they off and bailing fat? All those sorts of things. And once I've got that, like from an offensive standpoint, once I've got that, I don't, how much do you blitz? Like, it doesn't change what I'm going to call. It's just like, because that's not your base stuff. Now, if you blitz every down, it changes what I'm going to call because you're probably like a base cover 0 or something like that, or a 3 under 3 deep, and that changes up where the openings are in your coverage. It might change up our attitude if you blitz a lot. Like, it changes up your attitude as far as like, okay, they're going to blitz the house, but we think that they're sloppy in their blitz angles, and so they may get us, and it's going to be 2nd and 9, and then it's going to be 3rd and 10, and then we're going to pop one for 65. Right. And we're just willing to. So sometimes we just have to say we got to live that way. If you want to be a bend but don't break defense, okay, I'm cool with handing the ball off for 6 yards a pop. I'm fine with that. I got no problem. And if that's the way that you want to, so I just need to know what your attitude is as far as defensive, and I can get that 2 games, right? The only thing I look deeper for is if, well, let's say that it was a situation like this. Let's say that it was a situation where week 10 didn't matter. Okay. I need to go back and look. All right. Is everybody playing that was in week 9? What does it look like before that? Let's say that they had a team that they blew out and they weren't challenged at all. I probably didn't get a good look at them. Let's say that they played a team that blew them out. I probably didn't get a good look at them. So then I'm going to have to go find other film. But generally, 2 films. 2 films, and then if we have to go deeper for somebody that looks like us.
Those blowout games, I always just cut it at half. Like
almost always, yeah.
Now, maybe you want to see what adjustments they make, but they're probably not.
You start seeing those clean jerseys, and it's like, all right,
yeah.
Yep. I think the biggest challenge is getting to know that team, and that's the situation that we're in. Is not only do we not have with some of the teams we play, so like the number 1 team, if we go in as a 4, the number 1 team, if we are able to win a first round game, which would be the first playoff win, in school history, if we're able to pull that off, the team that we play now, we did play them 2 years ago. We played them in the first round as a 7 seed, and they were a 2 seed, so we know a little bit about them, but we have no common opponents. We don't have anything. We have a team that we scrimmaged that played them, but they got destroyed by them, right? So, like, how much do we can learn from that? We have
nobody's.
We have one common opponent. We do have one common opponent.
Nobody's the same from scrimmage to
right. And these are right, exactly. So there's another that I think is either the 2 or the 3 that we might have one common opponent, but from back at the beginning of the year before we got into district play, there's multiple teams that we could play that we have either no common opponents or the vast majority of their schedule is teams that we did not play and that we don't really have, no matter what, we don't have a good grounds for comparison on who they really are. Right. When we call it district play, officially our district is disbanded, but we still all play each other for the most part. And so the teams that we're playing now, most of the teams we're playing now, we generally have a point of comparison. Now, luckily for us, because we're the 3A in the district and there were some 6As in the district, those 6As are no longer playing the 3As. And so we replaced them with a couple of teams that fit that description. We had to go travel to find some teams that we could play that were more our level. And so we've already done this thing. We've already done this where we had to go play teams that we don't have a real good idea of, who they really are. So it's really interesting figuring that, trying to figure out, okay, I can see their record. I can see their film. As if anybody's ever done college recruiting, this is the really hard thing. A guy looks like he's just a baller, right? And then you realize that he's playing at a very low level or playing because I always want to see your best game and your worst game, right? I always want to see, I want you to see you against one of the top teams. What'd you do against the top teams? What did you do against the teams? Like we've talked about before, linebacker. Like my head coach when I was at Ellsworth said, I need to see linebacker defeat a block. And it's like, well, I don't have that. He's just running around his highlight film, just wreck the shop because nobody could get to a linebacker, right? And so I had to go digging for that film, and I couldn't find it. And that kid didn't get a scholarship, right? But the thing is, like, I need to see you against teams that can block a linebacker. If I'm a college recruiter, I need to see you against the good teams. If I just go off of your highlight film, I'm an idiot. I need to see a full game against a good team where they made you pay for mistakes, they made you pay for being lazy, all that kind of stuff. And if that's what we're going, I've got to see a game where I really want to see a game where I know what the level is. Now I can see them in a competitive game and get an idea of how they play in a competitive game, but I don't know how good that team really is.
Right.
Was that a competitive game and it was competitive because both teams are great? Was it a competitive game because both teams are terrible? Because again, we've talked a lot about our playoffs or our scheduling and stuff. And there's a lot of teams that work to schedule very hard schedules because they get a lot of points. We've been on both ends, by the way. I can honestly say that, we may have thought we were doing one and we ended up the other. Some years, because again, small schools up and down, and ours seem to all have like synced up like a women's locker room. And so they seem to have all of them have a really good year, and then all of them have their down year. And so like one year it's like, oh, you guys scheduled an easy schedule. And the next year all their seniors are up and it's not that easy now. And so like this year we're the team that's getting better seeding because we're not the only one, by the way. It's everybody is getting better seeding because everybody that we're playing out of our region is like 10-0, 9-1, like this kind of stuff. But then other years we have all of these teams that are easy to beat because they're on their down year. And then we have a good record because of that. And I don't say they're easy to beat because we were the worst team in the state, so we should be the easy one to beat when we came in.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But now everybody wants to schedule us, right? Because we're small, but we're going to win some games. So all the bigger schools are like, hey, we want you back on the schedule. It's like, get away from me. So like so people have scheduled specifically to have hard schedules, and people have scheduled specifically to have easy schedules. Some schools still just play their old district schedule because that's who's near them, and they're all over the place in size. And you're like, okay, here's a film of them against this gigantic 5A, and here's a film of them against this 1A. And
that's crazy. That's crazy. It should never be seen.
We don't play a 1A. We scrimmage 1As, but we play 2As, and we play 5As now. We used to play 6As up until 2 years ago.
I think another difficulty we haven't covered yet is just knowing where the ballers are, right? So, like in my district, we know who's got offers, who's got it and shouldn't have it, who doesn't have one but probably should. Like we know the kids we're going to have to highlight, and we may have to scheme up, right? Whether it's reading him, doubling him, whatever it is offensively. Are we going to double coverage him? Defense, like we know where those guys are. When you get into these weird Western Oklahoma teams that no one knows who they are.
Is that like, do you have like a panhandle out there?
We do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It so weird. It's like a desert or something, isn't it?
It is. We have little Sahara Desert there. Yeah. Which is so strange. We have everything in Oklahoma. It's the greatest state on earth. But there could be some kid out there we've never heard of, but he's got some small offer somewhere or something, right? We just don't know what we're getting into. The other thing that I'm going to talk about was travel. It's already hard enough to like figure out where to park the bus. Where's the stadium? Is it connected to the school? Where do we stop? Like gameplay. Start getting that extra mileage, which I know, like 2 hours for Oklahoma teams is not that big of a deal. I would say that's not average, but not too far above average. But when you get into these like 2.5, 3, 4 hour drives to go play a team, like I think part of that challenge is it changes your scheduling, right? I mean, we're talking about maybe your kids don't go to school at all on Friday because you've got a 5-hour bus drive and you need to get them on a bus at 8 because you got to stop and get lunch now early enough that it's not too close to the game or what, right? So there's just all these things you have to start considering. So as you get into the playoffs, you get outside of your comfort zone. You also get out of your region, although it sounds like y'all are a little bit chaotic anyway already.
I mean, it's normal for us to have, this isn't the Midwest, so like, a 4-hour drive is not down the road for us, but it's not unusual to have an hour and a half. And so a lot of times we'll get 2 hours. Now I'll tell you the worst one ever. And I happen to be on the other side of it, was our first round game in 2018. We played a school that is out on the Eastern Shore, and the Eastern Shore is not connected to the rest of Virginia. It is connected to Maryland. It comes down the Chesapeake Bay, and there is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel that you come off the Eastern Shore, and the Eastern Shore is its own world. And you come down through the tunnel, and you come out in Virginia Beach, and then you have to go all the way down 64, which means you have to go through Norfolk, and then you have to go through the Hampton Roads Bay Bridge Tunnel. And that tunnel on a Friday afternoon is never clear. And there are three other ways to get from Virginia Beach, Norfolk, over to the peninsula, which is where Williamsburg and stuff is, Hampton and Newport News. There's, I think, 3 ways to do that, maybe more. And on Friday afternoon, none of them are available. None of them. It's the worst place. It is worse. It might be worse than DC, than Northern Virginia, as far as traffic goes. I don't know. But we play a team that Arcadia, they were the 8 seed, we were the 1 seed. And they got in because nobody else got in. Like, just honestly, they never exchanged film with us. I don't know what the deal was. Like, they didn't exchange film.
What year was it?
2018. I called up. I did what we do. Hey, coach, these guys haven't responded to us. So I called teams that they played, which was hard enough to find because I don't know any of those guys either.
Right.
But I find them, hey man, they're not exchanging film. They're like, yeah, they don't do that. I'm like, okay. And he's like, here, I'll send you, I think they had a team that we played that they were playing first week of the following season. So we did an exchange. So I got a little bit of film on them. I'll just say that we don't take anybody lightly, but we felt good. They come all the way down that thing and they get stuck in traffic it took them 7 hours to get here. So they left at noon, basically. They get to the field at 6:50 p.m. I was like, Coach, as much time as you need to talk to the officials, as much time as you need to get loose. You guys been stuck on a bus for 7 hours. Nah, man, we're ready. Okay. I got off the bus. It was a running clock at halftime, and it could have been earlier if they allowed that. And they got back on the bus, and I was like, enjoy your trip. So I think that's about as bad as it can get. Not only being on the bus, but not move. 4 of those hours, I think they were not moving. I mean, like, that bad.
That's crazy.
We got absolutely slaughtered and sent back on the bus. They were literally back on the bus at 8:30.
That's wild.
And they got home probably, 2:00 in the morning or something like that.
Real quick, and talk about Athletic Speed Movement. If you have not gone over to athleticspeedmovement.com, this is the time to do that. I know the season's coming to an end for most of us. Even if you're in the playoffs like Joe and I are going to be, it's what, 4 more weeks at most. This comes out next week. So you've got 3 weeks of, 3 or 4 weeks of season left. It's a great time to get in, get it bought, get one of your coaches studying it on the side so that when you get in that off-season mode, you can jump right into it and start getting better for next season.
You really want to have one guy master it, by the way. You really want one guy to master it, not have
not a bunch. Yeah. Not a bunch of them. This is just like special teams. You don't need 5 kickers coaches. You need a speed guy, and he runs it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just like your weight room stipend. Yes.
AthleticSpeedMovement.com. Go there, check it out now. Do it. All right, Joe. Let's talk about advantages of these teams that we've never seen before. How's that in our favor?
Well, one of the things I think that the thing is, how can you make it an advantage? This is where being doing some networking. We have a coach on our staff. We call him Adam Schefter, right? We're like, hey, how's the injury report? And he's like, I'll know by Wednesday. And sure enough, Wednesday, he's got the injury report on whoever we're playing, and he knows everything about everyone. And if he doesn't know them, he knows somebody. We also have a lot of coaches who have coached a lot of places. So chances are, if we play somebody, we have somebody that knows them. So a big advantage to you can be just being a networker, being out there, meeting people, at clinics and stuff, talking to people, calling coaches up, asking them questions. And then you get on the phone when this comes up and you find one of those teams that has played them and say, dude, tell me the truth about them. Who's the guy? Who do I have to stop? Especially, it's even better if it's somebody that knows you a little bit.
Right.
It's great if, I'll tell you one of the advantages of our situation is once week 10 is gone by, or once you've played, so let's say, I almost use a bad example. Let's say Prince George. Okay, we play Prince George week 8. They have a new coach. I don't think we have any beef yet. Give it time, but for now, they're 5A. So even if we're both going into the playoffs, and I don't know what their situation is, honestly, but I coached there for 12 years, so I'm using them as an example. After our game is over, they have no reason to care what we do. Right? Unless we're playing a team that affects their points. But once we go into the playoffs, it doesn't matter to them. What happens in the 3A playoffs doesn't matter to the 5As. It has no impact. So if they've played a team and we know them, they'll tell us everything. Why not? Especially because it's good for the old district to have that kind of, or just even the region, just to have that kind of bragging rights of hey, we beat these teams and we go out there and do that. So if you can find teams like that'll be honest with you and that know your team. So find somebody that's played you, knows you, and has played them or knows about them and can say hey man, we played them, we played you. This is the deal. And obviously that'd be a common opponent, but you can use that and use that information and get a realistic evaluation, and hopefully they'll tell you the truth. Because I always hear these guys say oh, you're gonna destroy them or something like that. And it's okay, I don't think so. But sometimes, a lot of times they're right. A lot of times I've gotten those evaluations from people who have said you're much better than them. And a lot of times you get the advantage of, so like I'll use our strength of schedule. We have a very strong schedule. We are 4-5 right now. So we could either be 4-6 or 5-5 going in. Now in our region, everybody's right around that. But you have situations, we have teams and we play teams who might be 8-2, 9-1, but play that weaker schedule. And
Right.
we play that harder schedule. And so you have the advantage of sneaking up on somebody, right? Even though you're battle tested and they're not. So there can be advantages there. There can be advantages of just getting that information that they may not have on you. Now, chances are a lot of them are trying to do the same thing. But hey, if you're playing the school that doesn't want to change film, they probably don't have a lot of friends. That's
true.
So there's that. You're right. Home schedule means more when you might have to go. For us, a home playoff game means a lot because if we're a 5 seed, we might have to go, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, as opposed to being at home. We could have to go more, three or so hours, especially in later rounds. But I mean, there's also like, sometimes it's good that your kids don't know anything about them. The narrative can be whatever you want it to be. Now they're going to see the record, right? That's all that they're going to know. They're going to know the record. They don't know anything else because they see the film and they just see the film. And we can tell them, hey, that team they played isn't very good, or that team they played is really good. Don't think you're special. So we have some control over what our players think because they don't know those guys. They didn't grow up with those guys. I know you guys have schools that are a little more spread out, but you've still been playing each other, for a while. And, for the most part, if you're in your regular season schedule, our regular season schedule, we have kids who have been to all those schools, right? Like, oh, this kid grew up in Hopewell. This kid grew up in Petersburg. This kid grew up in Dinwiddie. This kid grew up in Chesterfield. This kid transferred from Dale or from Metallica. These schools are all relatively close.
Right.
And so, we have kids, we have coaches who have coached for those schools. But as we go into the playoffs, it becomes different. They don't know everything about those schools, or they don't. A lot of times we'll have one guy on the team who has like a cousin who goes to that school, and he's like telling them everything about him because he thinks he knows everything, and like he is controlling that narrative. But when they don't know anybody, we get control of it.
I look back at scheme in this situation because what we do is so multiple. We are so all over the place. Formations, like if you break down our film, if you get 2 films from us, you may think we run 4 to 6 formations, but that's just the ones we ran those weeks, right? We're so multiple, and you may never see them again. So if you could get all 10 films, you're like, guys, y'all have 55 formations, but we didn't run any of them, in a lot of weeks. So what we do is so multiple. I think that becomes an advantage to us because you're going to have to come in and you've not had time to prepare for this. Even if you had a look over game for your 10th week, you still couldn't try doing whatever we did because there's so much of it, right? You would have to be buying back a week or something to see it all. And we're just a super situational team. So we're going to do things as situation dictates. You're not going to catch us. We talk about special teams all the time. We're not just a kick it out of the back of the end zone team. We want to. And if we can, if the wind is right, our kicker can get it there. Yeah. But we also are not afraid to, pooch it right over the front line or hit a sky kick to the side. Like, we're not afraid to do any of that. And we put all of that on film. I think the only thing we don't take advantage of in special teams is like a swinging gate. Like, we don't have a swinging gate field goal, but that's because our kicker is like, I don't think, and I'm going to jinx us here and I know it, but I don't think he's missed one on the season yet, extra point. He's missed some field goals. He's also hit 50 yards. So, I mean, he's that guy.
Right. You don't need to, you just let him kick it.
So there's absolutely no reason for us to fake a swinging gate. We're going to come out, we're going to get up, 100% extra points and go on with life. But yeah, so I think, we have an opportunity to, even if you got the 2 weeks film and someone that looks like you're probably going to see a bunch of stuff you've never seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And defensively, I don't know anyone else around outside of the schools that these coaches come from that runs a defense that just hits you in the mouth like ours does, right? We're kind of that 9-man, 8-man spacing type. We're going to plug all the gaps and make you throw the ball. Now, we've given up some passing yards on the season,
sure,
but the teams that we should have been in it with most of them have not. That's not been a big enough advantage because it's eventually, just like we talked about a few weeks ago, the red zone shows up. So it don't matter if you hit a bomb for 60, but you still got to come play red zone football, and that gets a little bit harder. So yeah, I think scheme-wise, we're a little different than everyone else. So even, you say, well, over 10 weeks, you probably played something like them, a flex bone, a single wing, whatever it is. You've probably seen something very similar to it, at least like an option team. And you get to us, and it's like they're kind of a modge-podge of everything.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we definitely have our system. It's funny because we've had Thad Wells on and talked about the Ruski risk cards, and I feel like at the week 3, week 4, week 5 of those risk cards, people were looking at what we were doing and they were like, God, they're stupid. They're just trying to do too much. And we probably were, but we also felt like we couldn't do anything unless we tried to do too much. We just honestly, we freaked out in games, and now we have teams at the end of the game who are like, man, I love what you guys are doing. Like with all the, and it's like we're doing the same thing. Our kids know how to do it now.
Yeah.
And again, when it wouldn't have been any different in anything that we did, which is the funny thing, is because when you have that many new players, it's just, we give a lot of looks now, and we're able to do a lot of things. Our formations are more based on what opportunities we see than having a base formation that is who we are. That said, we won a game running Ham Pro 324 pretty much a couple weeks ago, and that made me happy. Well, that's all I wanted to do. At least I got one. So yeah, that's definitely, an advantage where they don't really know what they've got, especially if they're not familiar with the system and the things that you do and the underlying. I think it's interesting how many teams get caught up in all of that stuff. And, obviously, you have to have rules and any if you do a bunch of movement and shifts and stuff, it just becomes hard. You do different looks, it becomes hard on the defense. It stresses the defense. But I think sometimes coaches get caught up in all of that stuff being on film and not just being able to look past it all and go, okay, this is at the end of the day, we've talked about it before. At the end of the day, you are something. You have an identity. Otherwise, you can't run 8 billion plays and 8 billion, but you can put lipstick on the pig a lot. And so if teams don't figure that out, or they don't anticipate what your adjustments are going to be, that could definitely be a huge advantage. I think that the advantage of the unknown for our kids is absolutely enormous, and I would put that above everything else, in that we have a young team, but this is kind of the way we've played, is we get hung up in the who we're playing, and when that is a nameless, faceless opponent, we are so much better. When we don't have the pressure of friends being on that other team and anything like that, I'm extremely happy that we have a home playoff game. But sometimes when you can get on a bus and go to somewhere you've never been before and play somebody you've never seen before, you get away from a lot of the things that get in their heads. And I think that can be a tremendous, I don't know if it's an advantage, because obviously you're the underdog if you're getting on the bus and you don't know as much. But there's something, high school kids, there's a huge thing to be said about just getting them out of their head.
And the control that there is of their environment. Now, cell phones, of course, have changed it, right? And you got to think social media is still out there.
Eventually, yeah.
Yes, when you've got, so I can remember when I was a kid, and then as well as since I've been coaching, like, what do you do from 3:00 to whenever you start your pre at 4:30, right? You cut them loose to go eat, and they all go to the local hot box and eat the crappiest food possible.
You do that?
Legitimately, that's what like most people do. Like, hey, be back. Release at 3, be back by 4:30. Roll call at 5.
Oh, we wouldn't see him. No,
yeah.
No.
So it's like, what do you do with that time? And
I've never had a problem with that time.
It's really hard, I think, to keep kids locked in for that long. So you're at 3:00, you're like, all right, it's game time. And you still got 4 hours till kickoff. Like, that's not real. But if you're on the bus,
yeah, no, it definitely
helps. Is, right? You're like, depending on what your rules are. I've seen, actually Coach Cole, the guy I'm working for now, He has a like no music, no, just shut the hell up on the bus and focus until we're.
Yes.
I think it's 15 minutes from the opponent's stadium. Then you can go crazy. But
I do the opposite when I was head coach, and I just learned that that was what we did as players. So,
right.
The only thing that I haven't brought from what we did when I was playing in high school is we had a chapel session, and it's just it's difficult at times, but we very much 3:00 meal. And then there's a free time, but it's like this is your time. You ate, you got 20 minutes to check all of your equipment. And really that's the time to go to the bathroom, do all that kind of stuff, get that out of the way. And
Right.
I've always for home games wanted a quiet time, 20 minutes. And if it's on the bus, then it's the last 20 minutes before we get there is quiet time. I grew up with quiet bus rides, going to it. But now see, I grew up, we didn't have a bus ride over 20 minutes. Right? So the only time that there was any noise on the bus was coming home from a win, because there was no noise coming home from a loss. There was no noise for 20 minutes, and none of the bus rides were over 20 minutes. On going to buses were just quiet for me, so I can't deal with the bus rides. So somebody else, I just can't do it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, taking that out of it, you're right. There's always managing. There's always guys that, even when I will schedule every second of that pregame, but there's always, there's the kid who's like, hey, my dad's in town. He's not normally in town, and he wants to bring me lunch. So he's not going to eat the team meal. So he's going to go out to meet. There's always they'll find every little thing. Right. I put you on a bus and I take you 2 hours away. You can't do any of that. I don't have to deal with it. So that's absolutely a massive advantage. Yeah. Good Lord. No, you let him leave oh no.
Yeah, it's a thing. All right, man, let's get into
I will just real quick. I had on that note, when I coached at Amelia, they had a half day. And I will tell you that in general, I trusted that group of kids. There were one or two that I would like to keep with me, but overall we had built a trust with those kids. And I got in a fight with administration. This was one of my many fights with administration and why I'm unemployable and probably will never be a head coach again. I said, and it didn't help that the girls volleyball team had a game the same day, same situation, same scenario. They got out of school at 11:45. So I said, need to be back at 3:00. If you can't get a ride back, stay. We'll put a movie on in the in the locker room or whatever, or the weight room, and put it on a projector or something like that, and we'll take care of you. But we have team meal at 3:00. If you're not here at 3:00 for team meal, you're not playing. Told them that. Cool. Administration says you can't let them leave. And I was like, they're out of school at 12. Well, they can't leave. Well, I already knew girls volleyball team was doing the exact same thing, and they were allowed to leave. And I'm not going to bring, let's just say it's boys and girls. I won't bring the other potential thing into it, but
we got you.
I believe that it factored in. And that was where the argument came in. And I lost that argument, and they lost the coach. But it just took a little longer. But yeah, we were supposed, and in that scenario, I was supposed to keep them, and I had to keep them from 11:30. And the thing was, that was a senior heavy team, right? They drove, they could go pick each other up, everything like that. And I trusted them. It wasn't a big deal. But that was one. We had to keep them from 12 to 7:00.
Whew, that's a long time.
Here's the funny thing. They knew that I went to bat for them. And so they were all there. We put on a movie. They watched a movie, hung out. Then we watched film, a little extra film. And then at 3:00, we were in our normal routine. And, again, they were a mature team who understood that I did what I could. This was the deal. We don't have to, we don't like it. And they came in and honestly showed why they should have been allowed to do that. But yeah, that's so different from, from what you said. It's I was not even allowed to let them go on a half day.
That's pretty funny. Jump to the last part here. what are some things you can do to prepare yourself for this year? Obviously, this comes out on Thursday of most people's playoff week,
Mm-hmm.
so you've hopefully already done most of these things, but there's another week coming. So, what are some ways that you prepare for this situation, the unknown? How do you get more advantages than disadvantages?
I think we've hit on a lot of it. Talk to other coaches, talk to outside coaches who have a perspective. There may be you if you are in, the recruiting circles, right? You can talk to college coaches who recruit both schools because they may have been to both of them. College coaches aren't always like what they used to be, or what they should be sometimes, but you can get information from them, breaking down that film, watching. You don't need to watch every game, but you can find schools that have played against them, find some common opponents if you can, try to get an idea of who they are, control the narrative of your players and what this game means and who this team is and what their record means, what it can, especially when you get in the playoffs, you can talk about what it means for your school and put it more on us. I think especially I love the nameless, faceless opponent. Put it on us. Don't put it on them. It doesn't matter. Who they are really doesn't matter. You can't get away from who they are when it's a rivalry game. Right. But when it's a nameless, faceless opponent that's on the other side of the state, it's a nameless, faceless opponent. It's about us. And you can get back to that, like, it's us. Let's do us. I think one of the things that you can do in the playoffs is you can really, really by playoff time, and hopefully by week 7, 8, 9, you're doing this, but by playoff time, you're a good enough team to make the playoffs. I know some places, and I know we have teams that get in the playoffs at 0-10 just because there's 8 schools in their region and that's it. But for most of us, we get into the playoffs, we're okay. If you have any hope of winning a game, if it matters at all, you ain't bad. And you've kind of done what you can do. And so it's now really refining, polishing things up, sharpening the sword type of thing. It's like your practice time can be spent on just getting sharp, getting into the little things. You might have some injuries replacement because it's late in the year, getting a new guy caught up to speed, but you can spend a lot of your practice time really sharpening things up. And then one of the biggest benefits of playoff time is that the big ball of fire turns off early. So we got to go home early. We do have lights, but it's kind of like an indicator, like, all right, it's time to go.
Something I've gotten into this year, and it's because of COVID. So it's something that COVID did to you all. But everyone has a live stream now. It's like the new thing. Okay, so people want, for whatever reason, they have a YouTube. They have even Huddle they host a live stream thing, which is a little bit better as a coach if you're going to have one. Maybe you use Huddle, and I'm not a super fan of Huddle either, but at least they pull down your film after 2 weeks. So everything before that's just highlights. There's a lot of, even third parties out there that are like getting people to give them money and they will host their live stream. The problem is they leave it up. So What I've gotten into to prepare for a lot of teams now is I go find their live stream. And if you have the assets with a computer and the ability to screen record, you've got all their film.
Yep.
Right? You don't even have to reach out to other coaches and be dependent on swapping something they need for something you need. Nope. It's just go get what you need, and it's all out there. So I don't know. Obviously, my very first year coaching was COVID, but it was 2020 was my first year in the game. I don't remember live streams before that. I don't remember anybody having them.
They weren't as common, but we had at Amelia, we had a live stream in 2017, 2018, maybe even before that. Yeah. But it was on Facebook. They just live streamed it on Facebook.
I think if you have that, and I'm saying this at my own detriment, figure out a way to set it to delete after 2 weeks or archive where they can't find it or whatever, because at least then it's the 2 weeks of film they're going to get anyways, sure. Right?
Theoretically, if they actually respond to these.
Now, at some point you have too many, right? If you have 8 films, well, that's a lot of work for your assistant coaches to break down all that. And what do you really get out of it? Probably nothing. Their favorite play is power. They're going to show that in 2 to 4 weeks, just like they would in 2 to 8 weeks, or in 5 to 8 weeks. So, but that's something I've done.
There's diminishing returns on film breakdown for sure.
For sure. But that's something you can do looking into the future, right? You can look at who are we likely to play. So, Joe, it's something y'all could start doing this week. Like, here's 4
trying, but there's 6 teams that it could be.
Could be that too, right? And then when you get outside of that, you get into the first round, and you got to start figuring out who the other teams are. That's even something someone could be doing to prep for that next round. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a cheat that probably not everyone's using. Now they will be, because I put it out on the interwebs.
Sure. Well, a lot of people just don't have the time or the resources to do that.
Yeah.
If you've got 3 or 4 coaches on staff, or even 5 coaches on staff, one of the things I think you can do is mobilize if you have a JV staff, a freshman staff, a middle school staff whose season is over, mobilize those guys. Be like, this is what I need you guys to do right now. We've been running, let's say that you've got a freshman staff, or let's say we don't have a freshman team, we have a middle school team and a JV team. So, middle school coaches are done. Hey, here's what we need. We don't need you at practice necessarily. We've been doing this with 5 coaches all year long. Like, it's nice to have a couple extra guys, but at some point we don't need all the JV and all the middle school coaches coming to practice, and just like, because, a lot of them are younger and they'll end up just like hanging out with kids, and you turn around and yell at the kids and it's a coach talking. But here's what we need. I need you to start breaking down, give each coach a team. We got 4 teams that we might play in the playoffs. We've got 11 possibilities. So we don't have enough JV coaches, but here's a team. We've got film, start breaking it down, or we don't have film, but here's how you can get it. Start checking YouTube, start checking, wherever the stream might be, and see if you can get some detail on them. Like, so we got Shefty, he can probably get film on them, but you gotta have that one. You got that guy that just knows everybody. Got Mole.
Let him go to work.
Yeah. I mean, that's a way. That's something you could do is use those guys to start getting you prepared, not to necessarily game plan, but tell me, and hopefully they're running your systems right. I know sometimes I talk to JV middle school coaches who are like, yeah, the varsity runs this, and I'm like, what do you mean the varsity runs that? What do you run? We run your stuff, and I'm like, why don't you run their stuff? It's like, well, they don't care, and I'm like, well, okay.
That's we could do a whole podcast.
Whole different podcast.
I do think because of who I'm friends with and the circles that I run in, and my OC now, who was a freshman OC for the Bixby Spartans for 4 years or whatever, and the varsity OC said, here's the system, do what you want with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Make it fit.
Yes.
And then the varsity OC takes things from the freshman OC and says, oh,
that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. That's really good. We're going to use that, right? Like,
whole different conversation. Yes.
So please let your younger ones have some freedom within your rules and sets. But anyway, I love the idea of, like you said, mobilizing those younger coaches, because one, they're not done with football, right? They're mentally,
unless they're like, basketball coaches or something like that, and they're going to another sport.
And 2, most of them probably want to be where you are. So bringing them up, letting them see what it's like, coaching them. We talk about coaching the coaches all the time, right? That's what JDFB is like, teach your coaches how to coach football. It's a great time to do that. Come show them what real drills look like. What does warm up look like? All those things that maybe they don't know. They might even be screwing up and hurting the development of your lower teams. All right, man. I think we did the thing. We checked all the boxes here tonight. Let's jump into our level up. I'll let you go first because you have the greatest level up.
It was a weird, I've been going through all of these biographies, and the recommendations come up on the next biography, and I've been putting off that the Trump Art of the Deal, which is kind of a biography, kind of a business book. It's like it's 1986 or 87. So it's, in theory, it's not the political Trump. It is literally Trump, relatively young, about 40 years old, right around 40, I think, was when the book was written, like I said, 87-ish. So relatively young, and he talks about his kids are very young at the time. His kids are 4 and 6, however old, 4 and 6 and whatever.
Now they're 6'9" giants.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was, but he's basically he talks about deals where he's buying hotels and casinos, and it's a level up in that it's interesting. It's from a level like, is it something that you should only read it if you really care about politics or you really care about business, like, or you just want to know, like, what I think is funny is this: the mentality, and I listened to the audiobook, and the
Right.
guy reading it is not Donald Trump,
Which is
but
just so sad.
but it is, but you forget that because the way that it is written, it certainly sounds like it was written by Donald Trump and he just didn't have time, or maybe it was dictated.
Right.
I doubt that he sat down and wrote it, right? But dictated. But it's the same person. It's the same person. It's just transferred from business deals and hotels and casinos to politics. It makes you want to go make deals, right? Because this stuff sounds cool to me. The wheeling and dealing, and that, like, this is the thing that he's passionate about, legitimately passionate about, these deals, making these deals, winning these deals. And it's not the money, it's not the money. I'll tell you that about 3 biographies, not every biography that I've read, but the last 3 big ones that I've read: Trump, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs the most, but all 3 of them, it's not about the money. The money's, like Trump even says in the book, the money's a way of keeping score. That's all.
Right.
But it's about winning, and it's about all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting look at mentality and stuff. But it is absolutely, because Daniel asked when I mentioned it before the show if it was like sounded like him or something, and I said it is wild because it's not him talking, but I've
Still
read a
captures
lot of
feeling.
biographies, and there's not a single biography. I could add up the number of times that this biography says totally, and it's less than every other biography I've ever read in my entire life. It is hilarious the way that it is just written the same way that he talks now. He's a dude from Queens.
Have you listened to? But it's funny that he's a New Yorker, like, because you can hear it come out now. Like, once you, like, I don't know anything about him. He was before my time, and then now obviously president later in my life.
Right.
But
Yeah.
have you seen the Shane Gillis
Yes.
How to Be Donald Trump?
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one. Yeah.
He just says you just got to say an adjective about a thing, and then say, "When I came in here, I saw the adjective about a thing." Right? Like, man, this is a big room. When I walked in here, I said, "Wow, this is a big room." Like, that's how you sound like Donald Trump. Biggest room. That's the biggest room.
Yes.
That's
But it's funny because I do know the shtick, the Shane Gillis shtick, and reading the book from 40 years ago, you're like, it's the same. He could have done that 40 years ago. It's the same.
Right.
The same. It's wild. Just weirder now. Older.
My level up's a weird one, as they have been recently. Last week it was video games, so
Yeah.
it's just so late in the season. I don't have time to go out and be a better coach right now, and I'm not really listening to books. So I restarted the House MD series about 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of my, like, when I'm sitting in the deer stand, I have my AirPods in watching House. When I'm doing notes or show notes for the podcast or editing, it's going, and it's my daytime go-to show right now. MASH, still forever my nighttime go-to show. So if you haven't watched MASH, go do that. But House is really special for me because I first watched it on my first deployment to Iraq, when we legit thought we were going to die every day. Like, they trained us for, I think we did a 90-day train up to go to that one. And after about day 30, every single night we died in our training because they were the worst possible scenario. And then we got there, and like day 1, we landed in Iraq, and the enemy shot rockets into the front gate and blew up our front gate. And then we're like it was crazy. So night 1, we got in ground, and we were like, oh shit, we do almost die every night. Or maybe we die. I don't know. Very crazy time in my life. Anyway, I had started House and I was watching it then. So when I watch it now, I kind of get that, like, nostalgia of that time in my life. I was very young back then, 18, 19 years old. But it also made me want to be a doctor. And it's because of his, like, always got to be right, be the smartest guy in the room, push those around you to be better. But he does it with chastisement instead of, like,
That's I've never watched, but it's the really, like, sarcastic or like crotchety.
Oh yeah. Yes. Everything he says is putting people down, really. Which luckily I didn't take that from him. But I legit, like, went pre-med took all the tests, didn't score high enough to be a doctor. I didn't get picked up my 1 year I applied. My wife is still mad at me because I didn't apply to med school more than 1 year. But that was the route I was taking because of House. I even wrote it in my letter to schools, like, House MD made me want to be a doctor because he's always just solving big puzzles. Anyway, I started watching it again. And they talk a lot more than I realized about, like, not putting family first. And there's obviously a lot of relationships. And I know it's TV drama, but it's built to make you think, right? Like, not prioritizing your wife, not spending time with your kids, And so this week I've really started focusing, which I know I'm a shitty husband for not already doing that, but just like trying to do the little things right, trying to spend more time with my wife. I'm pretty bad about being on my phone because I'm a football addict and it's football season, but that's my excuse all year long. So that's not real.
Right.
It's always work, but it's never work. And so this week I've just really tried to focus on that and putting family back first, spending times with the kids. I sat down and made like a schedule for even our weekends. Like, my wife was like, all you do is just do football. And I'm like, well, it's football season, right? Like, that's what weekends are for. But this week I just like made family time, and I hopefully she notices. If not, she'll hear this in a couple weeks when she listens to it, and she'll be like, oh yeah, I guess maybe you did a little bit. But just try to do family first this week, which is really hard to do in week 9 of football season, but trying to get it done. So if you're out there and you're listening, I know that some of you, your season is over, and you definitely go on dates, take the kids out to do cool stuff. But if your season's still going, like, just make time, because they've suffered you probably started in July or whatever and said, hey, honey, see you in December. Hopefully not. And it's not been that bad, but it's been bad enough. So I had to recalibrate. Anyway, that's my level up. Family time.
Nice.
Let's pay the bills and get out of here, man.
Yeah. Hopefully there's not like a civil war that's been going on for the last 10 days when this comes out. And
yeah, no shit.
Been making jokes about,
I think it comes out next Thursday.
Politics.
Yeah. It would have to start really.
We'll have to pause the release of the episode, edit it a little bit. Yeah. So check out joedanielfootball.com/system and get the guide to putting together your ultimate defensive system. It doesn't matter whether you're youth or high school. It doesn't matter 4-2-5, 4-3, 4-4, 30, 33, 35, 3-5-3, 5-3, 6-2. Name it, 5-2, 3-4. It really doesn't matter. You can be anything. It's system agnostic. It's about building that system. It's about the things that you need to have in a system. It's about the things about what a system is. It's about how to install your system, and it's about the mistakes that you must avoid with your system. That is a free download at joedanielfootball.com/system.
Jump over Patreon. That's where I'm selling all of my soul. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. I want to help you be a better coach. If you're young at the game, honestly, Joe's is the place to go. Go to Joe Daniel Football and sign up for his stuff. I do know that it is built around changing systems, though. You can learn a lot as an individual coach, but you're going to learn things that maybe your coach says, hey, we don't do that here. And I get that, right? You newbies, feel free to reach out to me. Jump on Patreon. There will be a tier for you. If there's not a tier, if you're like, nope, those are all, they don't fit me, they're too expensive, whatever, email me and we'll make it. I'll go make one for you. We'll make a tier that is the amount of monies for the education you want to receive in football. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I do have a website by the same name. I don't know what's there right now. It's forever going to be under. When football season's over, I'll make it real. But it's there right now. You can go catch the podcast episodes there if that's where you want to download them. And, of course, a YouTube that's very small and growing. Joe, where can I find you at?
You can find me at joedanielfootball.com. You can find me at joedanielfootball on Instagram and TikTok. Those are updated with things from the podcast and with some, weekly or daily just updates, football things to get you thinking type of stuff. So check those out. Football defense, joedanielfootball.com/YouTube, and then facebook.com/joedanielfootball, and then at football info on Twitter. By the way, I don't spend much time on social media, so
that's good. That's good. I'm ready to ditch it. I think I'm
pretty much. I don't have anything at this point on my. I don't check Twitter. I don't check Instagram. I haven't checked Facebook for years. I don't use TikTok. Like I said, we have them. They're updated. They're updated with things from Joe Daniel Football, but like I'm not on there answering DMs and stuff. I'll just tell you that.
Right. There you go. Email Joe at joedanielfootball.com or come talk to me. What cells are opening? We haven't talked about this in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've got at the end of the month. We've got the Thanksgiving Cyber Monday or Black Friday Cyber Monday will be the Football Coaching 101 series, and that'll be out at the end of the month, that Thanksgiving weekend.
Perfect. Podcast is at the FBCP. Jump over there and see what we're doing, or at Football Info is a great place to find it. That's where all the real updates go. If this is your first time listening to Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, especially Spotify and Apple Podcast. If you've been listening for a while, please leave a review. Especially, it's time to kind of separate ourselves from the competition. We need those 5-star reviews so more people will find us. There are lots of good podcasts out there, and I hope you're listening to multiple, because you should not be listening to an echo chamber of one way to do football. But if you found useful things here, give us 5 stars so other people can hear them too.
Weird night to bring up echo chambers, but okay.
It is a weird night, isn't
it?
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.